we now have one of the biggest debates in anime history. Who is smarter between Light and Lelouch, two of the most famous intelligent anime characters to exist? The genius who played God and took down the greatest detective in the world, or the genius who brought a nation to its knees and unified the entire world? Who is smarter? Let's find out. First up is spatial, and the first category is observation of materials. This seems to favor Light somewhat more here as he uses the materials around him to better degrees, see slightly more opportunities with what's available than Lelouch does. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Next is observation of space. This seems to favor Lelouch this time, who uses the available space as much as possible, taking advantage of certain areas to give himself an edge where Light doesn't do this as much. Lelouch takes this with medium difficulty. Last is puzzle solving. This is extremely close and difficult to conclude, but it seems to favor Lelouch slightly more as he uses it more often in terms of space, where Light has only used several times within the idea of spatial. Lelouch takes this with hard difficulty. Lelouch 1 more points, so he gets the overall points of 22 and Light with 4 points. Next is intrapersonal, and the first category is understanding your own intentions. This is really close as both characters have strong ideas of what they want and also have their times of wavering. Overall though, this seems to favor Light slightly more as he is more consistent, not wavering as much and able to explain in more detail why he is able to pull off the things he does. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Next is understanding what you will do. This is really close, but for similar reasons it seems to favor Light as he is able to explain each point in his plan and how it will affect something where Lelouch might do something amazing. The reasoning to his conclusion doesn't necessarily correlate. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Next is understanding your limitations. This is close, but it favors Lelouch this time, who is more readily willing to look back on his mistakes and try to work around them in the future. Understanding what is at stake more so than Light, as who eventually lost sight of the risks he was taking. Lelouch takes this with hard difficulty. Next is understanding your knowledge. This is really close as both characters have their moments of understanding their knowledge really well and also understanding it poorly. For instance, Light could have just avoided L from the beginning and skipped all the trouble, and Lelouch never realized he simply could have used his Geass to force every single person to obey his commands from the beginning. Light, however, seemed to know that this is what he was doing, but simply wanted to get back at L, while Lelouch never actually realized his full potential with his abilities. Light seems to take better advantage of his knowledge, so he takes this with hard difficulty. Next is adaptability. This is really close as both characters are able to come up with plans to get out of many situations. However, Lelouch is more often trapped than Light is, getting himself stuck in a situation he can't escape from, where Light has been able to turn things around more often even when it's not in his favor. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Last is emotional control. This seems close, but overall fairly goes to Light, as he only really loses his cool a few times within the series where it actually affected his planning, where Lelouch has been completely blinded with his emotions at times that it causes him to veer off from his original plans to take a more daring approach that doesn't benefit him as much. Light takes this with medium difficulty. Light 1 more points, so he gets the total points of 23 and Lelouch with 2 points. Next is linguistics, and the first category is knowing what you want to be said or what needs to be said. This seems to favor Light slightly more as he is put in more situations where he has to react on the fly, and knowing just the right path, is able to get what he wants out the conversation. Where Lelouch's best comes from his speeches to many people at a time. Light is far more consistent, so Light takes this with medium difficulty. Next is knowing the order of things to be said. This seems to favor Lelouch this time, as he was able to plan a conversation with his brother and record it in advance, knowing the topic of conversation and how it would progress. Light has done similar things, but not to the same scale that Lelouch has here. Lelouch takes this with medium difficulty. Last is knowing what words to best describe what you want to say. This is close. On one hand, Lelouch has his conversation predictions, but Light is more consistent in finding the ways to convince people of his thinking, able to pick words slightly more carefully more often than Lelouch does. Lelouch has the more impressive feat, but Light is much more consistent here. Consistency typically beats impressiveness, so Light takes this with hard difficulty. Light 1 more points, so he gets the total points of 16 and Lelouch with 5. Next is bodily kinesthetics, and this all goes to Light as he is physically more capable than Lelouch, as Light has fairly good hand-eye coordination as seen in his tennis game and his fight with L. Where Lelouch isn't so much shown physically capable, and when he is, it's to show how weak he is. Light takes these with easy difficulty, giving him the total points of 21 and Lelouch with 0. Next is interpersonal, and the first category is understanding others' intentions. This is really close. On one hand, Light's worst points were him not predicting L a few times as well as how Mikami would act, but the other hand those were few mistakes, and most of them were because he simply didn't know the person enough yet. And once he did, he was able to accurately predict their actions most of the time. Lelouch is also somewhat like this, having his moments of misunderstanding others and what they want, but also having his moments of knowing what they will do. However, Light seems slightly more impressive and slightly more consistent here, so Light takes this with hard difficulty. Next is understanding what others will do. Both characters are really good at predicting others' actions, and both have their moments of mispredicting things. Lelouch seems to be slightly more consistent here, as Light can find himself in situations he didn't consider where Lelouch has been in. Situations he wasn't prepared for. He did think of them as a possibility. Lelouch takes this with hard difficulty. Next is understanding others' limitations. Both are fairly good at this, but Lelouch seems to take this overall as he uses what others' limitations are against them more often than Light does, like when he created a landslide to wipe out Cornelia's troops because he was aware of the elevation advantage he had over her, because she was limited to ground troops, something which Lelouch took advantage of multiple times. Lelouch takes this with hard difficulty. Last is understanding others' knowledge. This is really close, but it seems to favor Light this time, who always made of his situation to take advantage of the fact that he knew more of his abilities than his opponents, where Lelouch didn't really use this as much so with his abilities. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Lelouch 1 more point, so he gets the total points of 21 and Light with 7. Next is existential, and the first category is determining what to believe in. Light is quicker to decide and determine his ideas and what he wants, where Lelouch contemplates slightly more. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Last is consistencies in that belief. Lelouch takes this fairly easily, as he is able to decide what is good and evil more accurately and why over Light, which in the end makes the world a better place, where Light's philosophy does it an idea of it overall. Lelouch takes this with medium difficulty. Lelouch got 1 point over Light, so he takes the overall point, giving him 8 points and Light with 3. Next is logical, and the first category is gathering of information. This seems to favor Lelouch slightly, as he never seems to give anything away in his pursuit of discovering a strategy to give himself an advantage, where Light reveals some of his thinking and his abilities when he tries to learn more of something. Lelouch takes this with hard difficulty. Next is deductions of information. This favors Light, as Light was able to predict actions more consistently than Lelouch does, and is able to figure out more accurately what things mean with lesser information than Lelouch has. Light takes this with medium difficulty. Last is how the information is used. This is really close, as both characters come up with ingenious plans to outmaneuver and take advantage of their opponents. However, Light's plans are more detailed and set out to cause more specific things, and are typically more successful than Lelouch's plans and strategies. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Light 1 more points, so he gets the total points of 28 and Lelouch with 4 points. Next is musical, and these all favor Lelouch, and Light never really has to determine sound in any meaningful way as much. Light is able to notice his watch ticking, able to watch multiple screens at the same time like L is, but Lelouch is always within the heat of battle. Actually part of the battle, which requires him to be more aware of his surroundings, using his senses to better degrees. Lelouch takes this with medium difficulty, giving him the total points of 20 and Light with a 0. Last is naturalist, and the first category is understanding of elements. Light takes this one, as he is shown to be a perfect student, getting perfect scores in school, which would include classes involving science and understanding of elements. On top of that, Light is shown inventing his own traps to protect himself and the Death Note. Light takes this with medium difficulty. Next is understanding of how elements work together. For similar reasons, Light takes this one, as he formed his own traps based on his knowledge of elements and how they work together, which allowed him to invent something that would destroy the Death Note if it ever was discovered. Light takes this with medium difficulty. Last is understanding animal nature. Light takes this one, as well as he uses humans' natural instincts to guide their actions slightly more so than Lelouch, explaining why people do things and influencing their actions, which is how he got L trapped for a little while, and that he didn't trust the police, nor did the police trust him because of Light's actions, where Lelouch seems to know of and understand the idea behind this but doesn't practice it as much as Light does. Light takes this with hard difficulty. Light won all the points, so he gets the total points of 25 and Lelouch with a 0. Both these characters were extremely evenly matched. only really taking points over the other through hard difficulty, which suggests in a way that a lot of these categories depends on how their showings are viewed and how high you'd rank something or how consistent you think they are. We see that Lelouch managed to get 82 points in total, which is impressive, but Light managed to gain 127 points in total. Honestly, seeing this has come to a surprise to me, as the last time I did a video comparing these two characters and who was smarter, I had found Lelouch to be the smarter of the two characters. But after narrowing down the things that made up these categories and spreading the point values to which sections of intelligence seemed more valuable, we see that Light came out on top this time. But why is that? Well, for one, it's because of the point values given to each, as Light managed to win the slightly more valuable categories. But as well, we see that compared to last time, Light won the naturalist category, which I previously thought would go to Lelouch. When we see the smaller details in naturalist, we are able to see that Light simply covers more in this category, as he has more showings of it, where I thought Lelouch did. These two are still very close overall, and it can be argued over a lot of these categories, but from my understanding, Light has many more consistent showings as well as slightly more impressive showings than Lelouch overall, which is why he won. Light won, so he will be moving on to the next round. What did you think of this comparison? Do you agree with the results? Let me know what you think in the comments.